So everyone, welcome to the Philotreat. Today we are going to have a very interesting discussion on the topic called consciousness. And with us today we have Professor Daniel, we have Professor Dimitrios Rinis and Aisha, very good research scholar, and scholar Avantika. So we are going to have a very enlightened discussion today on the topic of consciousness. We are looking forward to comments, discussions, and any sort of argument that is engaging as well as interesting. So, Professor Daniel is a professor of philosophy. Professor Daniel, would you like to take on this like presentation ahead? Would you like to present something on this topic? So you
Sure,
can
I have
go
some
ahead.
comments prepared, and
Yes,
I
Professor.
just want to thank Aisha for this link that she sent. By the way, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Professor. We can hear
Okay,
you very nicely.
excellent. All right, so I just want to thank Aisha for this link that she sent about this prize essay. Sounds very interesting, and I just want to encourage people to contribute to this $50,000 prize. Obviously, it's very competitive, but it could just be a good exercise to think about consciousness. It's a very fascinating topic, obviously. And Alicia, I shared this competition, and I shared it with Avantika, and I think I'm going to contribute. But the deadline is July 31st, so it's coming up pretty soon. But anyway, so I have some comments on consciousness, and I want to just contrast two competing theories. All right, so the first theory I want to discuss is called associationism. Okay, associationism is a theory of how the mind works and how we learn. Okay, so associationism comes from some British thinkers around the 18th, 19th century by the name of David Hume, John Locke, and John Stuart Mill. Okay, and it's a very empiricist, very sense-oriented school of thought that explains consciousness in terms of impressions and ideas. So there's an impression, you have some sort of sensation. So like I taste something, something tastes sweet, or I see a color. And then that impression gets copied into an idea in the mind. Okay, so it's a very simple process where all my ideas just come from the impressions that I've had. And so my mind just copies things. And then there's three kinds of associations. So my mind will associate impressions in different ways. So I can say, well, these two impressions are linked by a cause. So impression one occurred, and then another impression occurred, and then I say, okay, these two are associated. All right. And then I could say some impressions are contiguous. They're contiguous, meaning that they're next to each other. And so I say, well, this impression and this impression go together. So if I like eat a strawberry, there's a taste and a color. Color red, taste is sweet, and they go together. And so my mind associates these things. Also, resemblance. I can associate two things, they resemble each other. So like I could say this strawberry and that strawberry they resemble each other. And so the mind will just build up a repertoire of ideas, and they're associated with each other. And this can explain our experience and our learning. And so people can go through experiences, and maybe you could explain like people who have been through traumatic experiences or abuse, they will associate things in different ways than people who have not been through that. So like you're gonna the past will predict the future. So you're going to have associations in your mind based upon your experiences. This is called associationism, and it's tied into Pavlovian conditioning. Certain theories in psychology say that, okay, this is how we learn. There's a stimulus, and it creates a certain reaction. So like food will create a reaction. It says, okay, this looks good. This makes me want to eat. And then you can pair that stimulus with something else, like you ring a bell, and then the bell becomes a source of of attraction. Like the bell now becomes associated with the food. So you can see how the mind is associating these different stimuli, and you feel pleasure on the one hand and pain on the other, and you start to shape your behavior. And so we can see this in like a rat learning how to get out of a maze. If you pull the lever, you get a reward. Okay, and the rat will learn. Okay, so this is the idea of associationism. It's very simple, and we just build these habits and customs of the mind. And the key idea is that the mind will just mirror the contingencies in the world. And there's no more structure to the mind. There's no innate ideas. The mind is just a blank slate. The mind is blank to start with, and the mind will just associate things and then build this over time. And there's nothing a priori. There's no innate structure that synthesizes or puts things together. So there's just sensations or impressions, and then they build these associations. And so like I'm looking at Aisha, and I know her name, and then I see the face, and I associate these two things, and I've learned that. Okay, that's could change over time, and so that's associationism. And this ties into a more contemporary theory called connectionism. And this is in cognitive science. And they try to explain the way we think using artificial neural networks. This is kind of tying into Abantika's interest. And the idea is of connectionism, that the mind and the computer are very similar. And the mind consists in these neural networks, and they just have a bunch of neurons. They're individual neurons, and there's a certain weight that gets attached to them of how strong the connection is. So there's a neuron here, and this neuron gets activated, and then it associates with another neuron, and there's an input unit, and then there's an output unit. And so it's a very linear model of the mind. So you see like a bird, well, there's a neuron gets activated, color. Then you also get activation of like the activity of flying. This gets activated. Then there's the sound. This neuron gets activated, and then you have certain relationship patterns that are forming in the neural network. So it's based upon individual units and their associations. And it's very similar to associationism. So you have associationism being the progenitor of connectionism. Okay, so I think I'm very critical of these views. I think they oversimplify consciousness. Okay, so consciousness is not just forming generalizations, forming patterns, and connecting things. I take more of a Kantian view. So I'm gonna devote a little bit of time to the Kantian view, and then I'll close. So the Kantian view says we have both receptivity and spontaneity. So the mind not only receives input, but it also constructs and synthesizes that input. So we're not just taking impressions and associating them. We're putting things together in a very sophisticated way, and requires a kind of architecture of the mind to do this. So you have receptivity and spontaneity. You receive, but also you put it together actively. So the mind is also spontaneous, because intuitions without concepts are blind. So if you have just intuitions coming in, but you have no concepts, they're not making any sense. Okay? And so for Kant, we have these a priori structures. You have to have a certain logical structure to make sense of things. You must have the ideas of quantity, quality, relation, and modality. These are the four categories by which we structure reality. So first of all, I have quantity. I see one thing. When I look at Demetrios, I don't just see like a bunch of colors and shapes. I see one individual. How do I do that? I'm putting together different sensations and uniting them in an active way. Okay, there's a form of cognition that I'm putting things together in a very sophisticated and active way. Secondly, there's also the basic idea of a perception, the fact that I have a sense of my own identity, and in light of my identity, I'm putting together different sensations in one consciousness. So I have this sense of the I, and I'm putting together various sensations in a way that unites them. I'm not just taking little bits and just copying them. I actually have a self-consciousness, and all these things are coming under me. So this is a perception. Maybe this is different from AI. Is AI self-conscious? Is AI putting together the bits of data in a way that unites them under a self-consciousness? I don't think so. I think that's a key difference. And also, the imagination is very key. The imagination. What is imagination? We can imagine what is not present. So I can think of something that is not really here. I can think of like a castle. I can think of like a dragon. It doesn't really exist, but I can think of it. So what does the imagination do? When we put together our experience, we have to do a lot of work. So the one thing I want to highlight is we go from the general concept to the individual. Okay, so I have a general concept of like person. This idea is general. It applies to any kind of individual instance. And then I can apply that to individuals in front of me. So I can go from the general to the particular. And the imagination allows me to connect the general to the particular, because otherwise they're too different. So how do I go from this general idea to a particular? Well, I need the imagination. And furthermore, the imagination is able to put together things over time. So it's not like I get just individual impressions. I'm also connecting them over time. So the thing that is past, I don't see it anymore, but it's still kind of in the background. So when I talk to someone, I don't just get I get a present impression, right? I'm seeing the current impression right now, but I'm also tying it into the past. So I know Demetrios, and when I talk to Demetrios, our past is kind of informing our relationship. So we've had very good interactions, and this is now forming the current interaction. Same thing with Aisha, Madhvi, Abantika. It's informing them. So my imagination is bringing this together into one thing. All right, so the idea that there's just these individual time slices, these individual units, that is not enough to explain our experience, okay? And then just to confirm, this contemporary thinker, Steven Pinker, has criticized connectionism. And he says, we don't just have individual units, we put them together in logical relationships. So we don't just say, okay, there's a color, sound, shape. No, we structure them logically, and also we are able to move from the general concept to the individual. And this is very different from just a very crude kind of associationism that just says, I mean, we have that, but we have more than that. And it just says, okay, we have this little bit, this little fragment, and we can relate them. But we do more than that. We also have logical relationships. We say, we unite things over time. We use our imagination, and we synthesize actively. So I just want to just close there and see people have their own comments or just any feedback. And thank you for your attention.
Yes, Professor. I'm sure that others also have taken a very deep insight from the professor's talk. So before I add my comments, anybody would like to take up this discussion ahead? Can go along. Aisha, would you like to start, please?
Right
Go
now,
ahead.
I'm just trying to process all that Professor said.
It was very
about
deep.
associationism and connectionism, and then Kant's, you know, about, thing about mind and how it works. I think I think I need some time. I'll come back with some questions.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Professor
Sure.
Demetrius, what's your comment on this?
Yeah, I'm more into Kant as well. I don't believe that associationism or connectionism alone provide any sustainable solutions to how consciousness operates, actually. It's much more complex than associationism or connectionism. It does have to do with the architectural design of the mind itself, as Professor Daniel stressed. And of course, Kant has a solution here when it comes to both analytic and synthetic judgments, and a priori properties of an object, as well as the judgment that follows after synthesizing things. And I believe, thanks to these a priori and a posteriori judgments, we can eventually come much closer to how consciousness works, especially if we also take into account the experience as it's necessary to both ourselves and also to the objects we experience as well. Yeah, that's for a start, I would say.
Yeah, I have there's a comment from Avantika. If you could read that, Professor Madhvi, it's very good comment.
Yeah, I can read that. 1 second. So Bantika, she's saying that I personally feel that associationism and Buddhist ideas of consciousness are closely related. Associationism says that our mind works by linking one thought to another like a chain. One memory or idea triggers the next. In the same way, Buddhism explains consciousness as a flow, not something which is fixed. It arises and passes away, depending on causes like sense contact and past experiences. So this is a
Yeah,
word that Avantika wanted to share, that it is less like a flow. Yes, Professor, what you
yeah,
would like to
that's
say
a
on
very good
this?
That's a very good comment, and I think that Hume and Buddhism are very similar, because David Hume says that when he looks into his mind, all he sees are passing sensations. There is no self-consciousness. There is no like substance of the I. So traditionally, there would be this idea that there's a substance that has impressions, but Hume says, no, they're only impressions. That's very Buddhist in the idea that of no self, of the idea that the self is really an illusion. So yes, I think is correct. But the Kantian view would say, how can you have a representation without any I that captures it? So if I have no self-consciousness, how can I even have a representation? It would just be nothing. So that would be my response. I think I'm more on the Kantian side on this issue.
Professor, I'd like to add on the comment, like on the reflection that you have just said about this associationism. I would just like to relate it to the intuition. So you said something that about Kantian's intuition. It is based on the concepts that we had already in our past experiences. So you are saying that intuition or intuitive knowledge is a kind of representative knowledge. You're representing something that was already has been happened in the past. So how would you like to connect this concept of intuition to the idea of association, to the daily experiences of the world? So in this case, you mean to say that the experiences, the lived experiences that I'm having right now is generally is going to formulate my intuitive world, the intuitive experiences. Is that what you mean to say, or there is some different meaning that you want to reflect on?
Yeah, the idea is that we learn by experience, and so we get trained by experiences. So like you can see it in animals, right? An animal will get a reward, and it will repeat the behavior that got the reward. So I think that you can see it also in people, and I made a connection with like trauma. So like people who have undergone trauma will have different expectations about life. They'll approach situations as the past predicting the future. The past predicts the future. So they'll say, okay, well, I've been through this bad thing, and so therefore this current thing is also going to go bad. Okay, so but someone with a different experience, they'll say, well, I went through a good thing, and so this new experience will be good. So totally different approaches to the way you think of the world. So your picture of the world is forming just bit by bit through individual impressions. I think that's to an extent true, but I think there's a lot more to how consciousness works, and I think there's a big gap between like the way like ChatGPT works, which I think is more of associationism. It's compiling lots of data and finding patterns in the data. So it compiles data, finds patterns, and then it kind of spits it back out. Is that how our mind works? I think there's a big difference. And so, yeah.
So, Professor, I understand with this talk that you mean to say that there is intuition and which is always associated to the lived experiences or the experiences of the past. So, would that mean that we don't have any pure intuition? Anything that is coming all of a sudden, everything like all of a new, some new creation, novel ideas which is not based on our past experiences? Don't we have any such kind of word as pure?
Well, the associationist would say we have no pure intuition. We have no concepts that are not based upon experience. It's very empirical. Whereas the Kantian would say we do have these ideas that are innate that we do not derive from experience. So, for instance, the idea of infinity. Where do we get that idea? This idea is meaningful to us. I can say, well, infinity is something meaningful to me. I've never experienced it, but I can think of it. Where did I get that idea of infinity? From my experience? Well, how can I experience infinity? How could I even have an experience without the idea of quantity? So I have to have this idea of quantity because before I can actually experience the world. So I see the world in terms of one thing, two things. I can't get that idea from experience. I have to have that idea already to have experience. Otherwise, my experience will just be just kind of a chaos. It'll just be okay, color, sound, light. Yeah, so there has to be this a priori structure.
Yeah. Yes, Professor Dimitrios, please go ahead.
Yes, and I would also like to add that Kant would also put emphasis on empirical knowledge, knowledge which is based upon perception, not the kind of deduced knowledge we could have, but knowledge based on the seemings. Like I'm looking out of the window and I see a tree. I'm not looking at the real tree, the tree in itself, but the tree as it seems to me, according to my perception. So if 10 people in the same classroom are looking at the same tree, we've got 10 different perceptions of the tree. But again, they're all the kind of false, like false perceptions. I mean, the way each one of the 10 students is looking at the tree, and according to his own reason. So everything is in the mind, everything is a perception. And if we have similar experiences, the new experiences of the same situation are also based on this inbuilt intuition within the realm of the phenomenal world, as you have correctly mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, the appearance and the thing in itself, right? The appearance and the thing in itself. When we experience something, we experience it from our perspective. And so we're not getting the actual thing in its fullness. So even when I talk to each of you, I don't know you in your full identity. I only see you from a certain perspective. From my perspective, I can see and think of people, and it might actually be distorting who you really are based upon my own experience. And we all do the same thing. So yeah, so that's an important fact about our consciousness. We have the appearance, not the thing in itself.
I think that's a very notable point, Professor. We all have appearances and not the thing in itself, and we always see the other side of the thing, but actually it is actually something different. So that's a very
Exactly.
good perspective about the things. If we always consider that the things we have already learned half, then we will be having the curiosity and drive also to know the things in a better way. But of course, we cannot know it fully. Like in Jainism, also it says that we only know the relative truth. We don't know the permanent truth. So I
Oh, is
think
that
most of the
Jainism?
philosophies, yeah, most of the philosophies cover this idea that we have this relativity, the idea which is not permanent, an idea which is not kind of that could be grasped all of it together. That is what also Kant is also sharing this idea, right? Aisha,
Yeah.
Professor Demetrius, yeah, you could go ahead.
Yeah, and maybe that's the reason why Kant would say that our consciousness is actually going through some processes like psychological, physiological, maybe mental processes, which seem to be non-cognitive, not in touch with the real world, but within the framework of a ephemeral um, a world of appearance, which you never get beyond. So it's all this all has to do with the way you experience your inner self, in contrast to your outer self. Let's say in a figure of speech. It has to do with how something appears to you and what you yourself seem to see as reality. But of course, it's not a reality. It can never be a reality in itself, according to Kant, of course. Some scientists and philosophers disagree and would like to prove Kant wrong, of course, by saying that there's not such a distinction. But we're going to mention that later on in our presentation.
May I just add? So this guy, Steven Pinker, is an interesting thinker. He's a contemporary thinker. And he says connectionism cannot explain several mental capacities that we have. So for instance, he says compositionality, the ability to entertain a new complex thought that is not just the sum of the simple thoughts composing it, but depends on their relationships. So compositionality, the idea that we can have a complex thought, and it's not just the sum of the simple thoughts. So we can think that a cat chases mice. That is more than just saying cat, mice chase. We relate those thoughts in a logical pattern, and we could change it. So we could say the mice chase the cats. So it's not just individual units, it's a logical structure that we have. So we can also use quantification. We can quantify certain variables. So there's a variable, and we can say this happens all the time, or this happens to everyone some of the time. We can quantify the variable, and that's an operation that is not just summative, summing together individual points. So yeah, those are some extra thoughts about why I think associationism and related theories are deficient.
That makes sense. Yes, Aisha, you would like to add on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have what can I say? I have a few questions and few comments, but I also have I have a few thoughts that I want to share on Bergson and how he conceives consciousness. So I'll move to that later. But what I want to say is that when Professor Daniel was, talking about Kant's, structure of the mind, and how we gain knowledge. It is true. The thing is, I think there can be certain similarities between this knowledge production that happens that happens in humans and AI. We have a certain architecture of the mind. So similarly, we can say even artificial intelligence has a certain, architecture of the mind by which it detects patterns and all. But the thing is, what actually differentiates our consciousness from their consciousness? What struck me is that he mentioned imagination, which I even, I think that I agree that artificial intelligence doesn't have. And even that, idea of the self-consciousness. So another thing which I also agree with is that artificial intelligence cannot come up with something like categorical imperative. It doesn't have a reason to formulate a categorical imperative. As I think Steven Pinker would also, say that it lacks the faculty of compositionality. It cannot come up with complex ideas. So I think we need to, keep these points in mind when we are trying to differentiate human intelligence and artificial intelligence. What differentiates us? It is not just the way we process information, but there are other faculties. Even volition. I don't think AI has volition in the way we have. We have freedom, right? So yeah, these are certain points I think which are important. I just
Yeah, So you said volition, imagination, sense of self, and the moral law. So those are really, really good points there about differentiating AI from human intelligence.
So I also have something to share about Bergson's consciousness, but should I go with it right now or after a while? I can. Others? Okay.
I think, Professor, it's fine because it's related to consciousness, so I'm sure it's all fine, right, Professor?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Aisha, you can go ahead, please.
I can go, right?
Yeah.
So I'm beginning. So the thing is, I was reading Creative Evolution by Bergson. So here he has, explained in certain, he has given in a somewhat elaborative way. He has tried to explain consciousness. So I'll also try to explain it in brief. So first of all, he thinks that consciousness is something that living beings have. But then he says that consciousness is something that is related to mobility and responsiveness. These are very important points. I'll try to explain it. So the thing is, he draws this distinction between, plants and animals. So he comes to the conclusion that plants are unconscious and animals are conscious. But then he doesn't say that, consciousness and unconsciousness are fixed states. He says that these are tendencies. I'll try to explain it. So he's that plant. He is saying that plants are actually immobile. That's why they are unconscious. So he's linking mobility with consciousness. Okay. So he says that plants which are rooted and they are kind of passive and they make their own food. But animals, they are mobile. They respond to stimuli and to their environment and they seek out food. So, and in further, he goes on to say that plants are immobile because, their cells are wrapped in cellulose, and cellulose is kind of a stiff material that forms their cell wall. So that gives them shape and it resists pressure, and that's why the plant stays upright. But it also, what it does is that it limits movement. But on the other hand, the cellulose also acts as an armor. It keeps the plant safe but also cut off from the world, from external stimuli. And that is why it is also not responsive, right? So the thing is, in conclusion, I can say that the plant doesn't need to perceive, okay, or process the environment in a dynamic way, in a way that the animal needs to do. Because the plants, they don't need to hunt or they don't need to flee. So that's why they are unconscious. But on the other hand, we can say animals, they can't make their own food, right? They don't photosynthesize. So they must move, they must hunt, and they must respond to threats. And so because their cells, they lack rigid walls, it makes their movement easier. But the thing is, the lifestyle that they have, it exposes them constantly to change, to surprise, and to danger. So they have developed nervous systems and sensory organs. And eventually, because of this requirement, they have developed consciousness. Now, Bergson's point is that consciousness is not something which is, a luxury. It is an evolutionary tool. So it has emerged because it was the living beings, it emerges when, a living being needs to act in an uncertain world. So this is how he has tried to explain consciousness. But then again, as I said, he's saying that consciousness and unconsciousness are not fixed states, but directions and tendencies. I'll come to this. So he's not saying that every plant is unconscious, or every animal is conscious. He says that an animal that has become a parasite, and if it becomes a parasite, it becomes motionless. So thus it can lose its consciousness, being an animal. So consciousness, he's saying that in this case, what happens is that consciousness has fallen asleep. It is dormant. Okay. Likewise, he's saying that a plant, it can regain movement. Like he has given examples of motile spores or primitive algae. So in such plants, we can say consciousness is awakened, or maybe at least partially. So ultimately, he's saying that it's not the category plant or animal that determines consciousness, but the conditions of life, especially, as he said, mobility and interaction with the environment. Further, he also, he creates this spectrum of consciousness. He's saying that within the animal kingdom, not all animals have the same degree of consciousness. So why? So, so again, so he's not saying that, uh, either we are conscious or we are not conscious. So we can say that it is a gradient. Okay. So we can think of it as a dimmer switch, not an on and off switch. Okay. So for Bergson, then, just a second. Hmm. So he's saying consciousness in the animal kingdom, we can say it grows as the need for choice and responsiveness grows. So it's, yeah. So animals, because they are more mobile and more exposed to, unpredictable environments and more capable of voluntary action. So here we need to focus on choice and voluntary action. So animals which are more capable of voluntary action and choice, they have more developed consciousness. So at the top of the animal kingdom, we see there are, primates, humans, mammals, where we can say that consciousness is fully awake. But on the lower end of the animal kingdom, we have, simple and parasitic animals, which are, worms or maybe sponges, corals, jellyfish, which have faint or dormant consciousness. So, so in such simple parasitic animals, we can say consciousness is somewhat, purely mechanical or reflexive without any, they don't have any sort of real awareness or deliberation. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Aisha. Yeah, consciousness is dynamic,
Yes.
right? Is that kind of what you're saying? Consciousness is it's associated with movement.
Yes.
Because of our consciousness, we are constantly aware of passing moments, and we're constantly moving through time as opposed to just stationary as a plant. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and our
Yes.
imagination, I think imagination and volition are related. Because when I choose, I have to imagine a possible future. I have to say, well, I could do this, and that gives me a way to determine my future. If I have to imagine, like, oh well, maybe today I could do something different. I could try something I've never tried before, and imagine that, and that ties into my choices. So I'm very dynamic because of my imagination, my consciousness, as opposed to just being alive, which is what a plant can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what Aisha has said has a different, diverse perspectives. But Professor Dimitrios, you would like to add to it, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean the meaning, the great meaning of choice, of free choice in Kant's theory. I mean, acting without any external material forces, and moreover, there's a will, which pushes a situation even further, and enables the moral law to come up front. So, for example, one may want to do something, may wish to do something, but that's not always the case because of this self-imposed moral law, which is enforced by the will. I mean, both of them, the free choice and the will, I think act as a safety net for the consciousness. Even in these ephemeral, empirical world we live in. Thanks to Kant. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Professor.
Yeah.
Professor Daniel.
Yeah,
Would you like
well, Kant has a very strong idea of free will as a capacity that is independent of any external condition. It is the ability to make a choice with complete freedom. That you're not bound by any kind of external constraint. So with AI, I think it's very important, and I want to tie this into Avantika because she is commenting here, and also Saima has a comment that I want to get that we should get to too. But so maybe we should go to Avantika has a comment about the Chinese room thought experiment. So this is very pertinent here, I think, because the idea of the Chinese room is that this is by John Searle, and the idea is that there's someone in a room, and they're getting messages in Chinese passed through the door. They don't understand Chinese, but they have a set of instructions that allow them to respond appropriately. And they push back a message that is accurate. Okay? But they don't understand Chinese. So this is kind of what a computer is doing. It doesn't really understand what it's saying. It just follows a set of instructions. And it can be very sophisticated, like ChatGPT is very, very good at giving appropriate responses, but it doesn't really understand what it's doing. It's not freely choosing the response. It is just kind of compiling data according to rules, and it can actually be better than us in many respects, but it lacks this capacity for volition. It is just mechanically kind of passing through in a very amazing and rapid way, but still mechanically moving through the data, lacking in volition, lacking in free will. So, and maybe we could get to Sima's comment, and then maybe we could move towards wrapping it up.
yeah. Professor,
Yeah.
just a last comment by Saima. Saima has said that she goes with the idea of Husserl that consciousness is intended or intentional, which means we humans act accordingly to environmental or atmosphere we stand. Thus, Sartre truly wants to bring out true authentic being through the concept of nothingness, and Kant added from the unity of experiences reach the right decision activity. I think this is a add-on to what you have given as a presentation today, isn't it, Professor? Or would you like to add some more comment to it?
I just want to read. I'm trying to read this comment. I'm trying to.
Okay, I will just say it once again, if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she's talking about the idea of Husserl that consciousness is intended or intentional. It means that
Mhm.
we humans act according to our environment or our atmosphere. Then then she concludes with the Sartre that Sartre truly wants to bring out true authentic being through the concept of nothingness. And then she added up the Kant's comment that Kant has talked about the unity of experiences, which helps us to make the right decisions.
Yes. Yeah. So intentionality. Consciousness is always about something. Consciousness is directed at an object, and that is a key idea of Husserl. That when I think, I am grasping the world. So I have an object, intentionality. And this is very crucial because I think this would tie into what consciousness is. Because if I think about matter, the brain is not about something. Okay? The brain, the physical brain is just material. So how can you explain consciousness from the material of the brain? So I think that consciousness is something that is not material. And I think it's proven by intentionality, because the mind is about something, but just material stuff is not about something. It just exists. So so that's my comment on Sima's comment.
Thank you so much. We have passed the time, but still, Professor Demetrius wanted to add something. Could you please, yeah, start it?
Yeah, I mean, just last question, if I may.
Yes, yes.
There are a lot of scientists nowadays who want to refute Kant, referring to the current war situations that are going on, Russia's invasion in Ukraine, for instance, and they say that it's due to Kant's theory, which makes it even more difficult for the people to have a clear image of what's going on nowadays. So what we shall answer to those who would like to refute Kant in that case? What's the proper answer? Is it due to Kant's theory that we don't have a clear-cut image of today's situation, and is it due to Kant that we experience this traumatic events in Gaza, for instance?
I mean, it would be hard to blame it all on Kant. But I don't want to blame it all on Kant. But I mean, I would say he would be against it because of the categorical imperative. You know, the idea that we should act only on a maxim that can be a universal maxim. It seems like these war situations are due to people who take up privilege for themselves that they won't give to others. So yeah, I mean, I'm very concerned about what's happening in Iran and the people there, and then Israel, people suffering because of governmental leadership that I think they take a maxim that they would not let other people have. So like, for instance, I don't want to open up a new, we probably should stop soon, but I can have nuclear weapons, but you can't. You know, maybe that would be Kant would say is that the categorical imperative? Maybe not.
Yeah, very good answer. I would agree.
Yeah. So I think it was very insightful, of course, and with lot of perspective on consciousness, not just in one direction, but I think it has a lot of different diversity to what we believe consciousness really is. So I think we will give the space and time both for us to think and think on the areas of consciousness, think on the perspective of consciousness, and what Professor Daniel has shared with us today. And if you do have any questions, like other scholars are here, I would just like say the names of them. So I think Murali Krishnan ji is here, Saima is here, Raj is here. If you can quickly introduce yourself, or maybe you can just you know just tell about yourself, then it would be nice. Otherwise, it's not a problem. You can just talk about the discussion that we had today in our group, that is Philotreat, and we will be staying connected with this discussion through our chats and discussions. I think it I think it will work this way, because I think everyone is tired. Everyone looks like we will be having these discussions later on or something. Professor Daniel, would you like to continue with some more add-on points, or we will just wind up this discussion for now?
You know what? I'm thinking about contributing a blog post to Philotreat, just kind of
Yeah,
wrapping up this great conversation,
that would be great. Even I
and
would
we can
have
have, yeah.
even yeah, even I would love to talk more on this topic, consciousness, because it's very close to me. This consciousness, every time we talk about it, something new will appear. It's topic which
Yeah.
we have not researched on it very well. Yeah, Aisha. And Professor Demetrius also, I think they have also different ideas on this. Yes, Aisha.
Yes, I was interested in what John Searle has more to say about consciousness, because the Chinese thought experiment, it opened up, ideas in my head. So I was wondering what else he has said about consciousness. One or two comments would be good.
I actually don't know. That comment came from Avantika, and the Chinese
Yeah,
room thought experiment. That's
yeah.
that's a crucial contribution from Searle, and but that's all I know about Searle. But it's a crucial contribution. It's very insightful, and Avantika has that insight that there's something fundamentally different between, even though it has the same outcome. So the Chinese room thought experiment is giving intelligible messages in Chinese, but there's a difference there in the lack of understanding. So it's a crucial contribution from Searle. I don't really know much more of his work, but definitely an interesting guy.
Hmm. No, I was asking if Avantika would like to make a few comments.
Yeah, she maybe she's kind of new, but she's been commenting in the
Ah,
chat. So maybe in the
okay,
future, hopefully,
okay,
Avantika. But
no
this is the
problem.
first time, so she's
Mhm.
yes, yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, of course. I think this discussion we should not stop. We should take it ahead with our chats. The ideas should always the ideas is something we should always work on. It is never like an ending. It's a new beginning. That's what I believe in. So I'm very sure that everyone here will talk about something on this with Professor Daniel in the chat box. And of course, we have taken a lot about consciousness because literally had a very limited idea about consciousness as associationism, because I almost believe that intuition is something which almost generated as a new idea. Okay, but what Professor thought it have discussed today is about connection of intuition to the knowledge, and that is something, a new and advanced knowledge that I'm taking up today. And of course I believe that everybody has different takes on today, and we will work on it. We will produce something new out of it, and we will keep on the discussions, right? So last
Absolutely.
line with everyone, last line, everyone can just say some last few lines and then
Yeah.
we can just
Yeah.
end.
Can
Yeah,
I add?
yeah, please go ahead.
I want to, sorry for the late joining. I want to add one quote of UG Krishnamurti about consciousness. Consciousness is a totality of your knowledge, experience, and the moment of thought. In his view, there is no separate higher consciousness. The self or I is just an illusion born out of the thought and memory. I think it's totality of one experience is consciousness. There is no separate thing like to be named as consciousness. I think.
Very, very nice. Even Professor Daniel talked about this only, that it is something which is connected to our memory, that means lived experience.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very nice. I think Professor Daniel would also be agreeing with this fact. But uh, I think you have taken Krishnamurti quote, if I'm
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. UG Krishnamurti.
Yes, yes, yes. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you to all the professors for sharing their insights.
Okay. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for joining, Murali Krishnaji, and I hope that
yeah,
you will be joining for our next discussions also.
yeah,
And thank you, Abantika, for joining on Professor Daniel's request. So I'm sure you have gained a lot of insight today. And Saima also is a very good scholar. She is also working on consciousness topics. So I'm sure that she has also gained much interest. So she's saying that consciousness is the handling of mind in a perfect way. I think I can agree with it. All of you can agree with it. It's about our mind, it's about our ideas. Anyway, so let's wind up this discussion for today. You can just say one line and we can just conclude and wind up. Yeah. All of you can just unmute yourself and say one interesting lines on consciousness so that it will remain in our memories, in our mind, in our ideas and beliefs.
Okay, I can start by saying that we have to behave more as a nominal self. Only then shall we approach understanding only then shall we have a real experience of how our real self could be, how our true self could be, our godlike self. And if we are to behave as moral persons, this is going to be only through the categorical imperative. The rule which would eventually apply to all of us.
So basically, consciousness is not just awareness, it's the light by which we know we exist. So that's my comment on consciousness.
Okay, very nice. Perfect.
Um, I would like to read out this, sentence by Bergson, what he says about consciousness. So he says that consciousness of a living being may be defined as an arithmetical difference between potential and real activity. So there's where deliberation, volition comes in, choice comes in. It measures the interval between representation and action.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will just wind up, and I will just add with thanking Professor Daniel and congratulate him for his wonderful work. And we also wish you all the best for the participation in your competition that you are going to. I think you are going to participate in some competition, right? If I'm not wrong.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So we wish you all the best. It's going to be best,
Thank you.
and you're doing your best, that we all know. So we all wish you the best. So thank you so much for joining, and we will be connecting soon with our next discussions.
Thank you, Professor Madhvi.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, everyone.
You have a good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we can leave the discussions.